They dressed me in moonlight and lies, silk that didn't belong to me, a veil light as breath, silver threads stitched into a dress that shimmered like frost. The seamstress called it pure, but purity felt like a story they tell girls so they don't notice the chain closing around their throats. Tonight was the Luna ceremony, where men with teeth for hands chose, and girls learned to smile like cages, where our pack knelt beneath the moon altar, while the elders spoke the old words, and wolves in polished armor pretended their hunger was sacred. In Duskfall, ceremony was just another word for surrender. I had promised myself I would not make a sound. When the gong tolled, the forest breathed out. Torches flared. The crowd moved in ripples, a river of fur-lined cloaks and hungry eyes. I could taste iron at the back of my tongue, the memory of biting it hard enough to bleed whenever fear tried to make a home in my mouth. Head high, Aunt Salome hissed, her fingers brutal on my elbow as she steered me toward the steps. Do not shame us. Do not refuse him. Do not— I know, I said, though my voice was a thread pulled taut, ready to snap. I know all the ways a girl can be quiet. Salome's mouth flattened. Then be one of them. Above us, the altar was a bone-white crescent carved from ancient stone. Below it, all the pack knelt, all but me. Girls lined the front, veils trembling in the cold. Our world smelled of wet pine, smoke, and anticipation, the night humming with the kind of silence that cuts. Kael Draven waited at the top of the steps. Our alpha. Not king. He didn't need the word. He wore power like a blade, lean and merciless, eyes the color of a storm that knew it would win. Kael had never smiled at me. He didn't need to. Everyone understood his promise. I will take, and I will not return what I take. The elders lifted their hands. The moon slid like a pale coin through tattered clouds, and the naming began. One by one, girls stepped forward. Names were spoken, choices made. Hands were branded with silver runes that made my stomach twist. The scent of burning skin disguised as devotion. The chosen girls shivered, some with terror, some with the terrible relief of knowing they had survived the worst part. But they were wrong. The worst always comes after. My name would be called soon. I could feel it like a rope tightening. Mara Vale, an elder announced, voice ringing through the trees. Every gaze turned. My body moved, though my bones wanted to anchor me to the dark earth. The veil brushed my lips. I tasted dust and old prayers. The steps were steeper than I remembered, slick with night damp. I counted each one like a confession. At the top, Kael's eyes met mine. There was nothing human in his gaze. I wondered if there ever had been. Bo, he said. His voice was low and quiet and dangerous. The kind of quiet that only exists right before something breaks. I didn't bow, because if I started bending tonight, I wasn't sure I'd ever stop. Kael's mouth curved. Not a smile. Something colder. The elders traded looks. Salome's hand fluttered like a dying bird at the edge of the crowd, but the one who steadied me, strange to admit, wasn't blood. He stood half-shadowed beneath the last torch on the left, a rag-wrapped figure with a hood blacker than the tree line. A beggar, that's what the market women called him when he drifted through Duskfall's edge with his silence and his impossible stillness. Always there, always apart, as if the night itself had grown a spine and learned to stand. He looked up when my name was spoken, and the torchlight caught his eyes. Not the color, those were unreadable beneath the hood, but the shape of attention. It brushed my skin like being seen for the first time. My breath snagged. I don't know why I thought then that he would be my out. Maybe because he belonged to no one. Maybe because I was so tired of belonging to everyone else. The ritual waited to devour me. Kael lifted his hand to mark me with silver. And I did something no one in Duskfall would forgive. I turned from our alpha dot, a ripple tore through the crowd, the sound a pack makes when its neat story is cut. And I walked away from the altar's teeth, down the stone steps, past girls who shrank back like I was a fever. My heart hit my ribs hard enough to bruise. The elders shouted. Salome gasped my name into the night like a prayer and a curse. I walked toward the beggar. He didn't move. He might have been carved from the same stone as the altar, burdened with the same brutal patience. I'd heard the whispers. If you kiss a man not of the pack beneath Luna's eye, the claim fails. An old rule born from older scandals, meant to shame girls who'd chosen love over rank. It had become a legend mothers used to warn their daughters, kiss a stranger and you'll curse us all. I did not believe in curses. I believed in cages and in the small, sharp keys a desperate girl can hide in the meat of her heart. I stopped a breath away from him. The rasp of his clothing and the wildwood scent beneath it hit me. Not the sour reek of the market's broken men, but something darker, layered with rain and metal, and something I didn't have a word for. My hands shook. I balled them into fists so no one would see. "Help me," I said, his head tipped, slow. How? Not a question. An unadorned blade of a word, cutting straight to bone. His voice was low, edged with a quiet that felt older than this forest. I swallowed. If I try to... The words wouldn't leave my mouth. They were heavy as stones on a drowned girl's ankles. I only need the intention. The elders must see me choose someone else. Then Kael cannot mark me tonight. I reached for the veil, lifted it with hands that didn't feel like mine. Please. Silence stretched until the world was all heartbeat. "Do you understand what happens?" he said. "When you fail." "Every day," I answered, the truth slipping out before fear could catch it. "I understand it every day." The torches hissed in the damp. The elders began to spill down the steps. Kael didn't hurry. Of course he didn't. Predators with full teeth never needed to run. I raised my face toward the shadow of his hood. He smelled like rain about to fall and the steel it would rinse clean. My lips trembled. I refused to look back at Kael. I refused to give the pack my fear. I leaned in. I did not kiss him. My mouth hovered a breath from his. Dangerous, blasphemous air between us. Enough for the entire clearing to see what I intended. Enough to stain the ritual black. Enough to ruin what they wanted from me. My eyes shut. The world narrowed to warmth and threat and the pulse that would not slow in my throat. His hand came up, fast, faster than any beggar's hand had a right to be, and closed around my wrist. He didn't squeeze. He didn't need to. The heat of his skin was a brand. Under his palm, my blood stuttered like it had heard its true name spoken aloud. "Do not," he said, quiet as snow. "Not for them. Not for him." The crowd gasped like a single animal. It carried the taste of smoke and scandal. The elders were close now. Their rings glittered like little moons. In that sliver of time, I understood 3 things. First, he could have let me damn myself, and he hadn't. Second, Kael was nearer than I wanted to believe. His presence crowded the space behind me like a storm born of knives. Third, the beggar's stillness wasn't poverty. It was restraint. "Let me go," I whispered, more plea than command. His grip eased but didn't fall. "Look up." "I can't." "You can," he said, and then softer. "Mara." He said my name like it wasn't an apology. I looked up, under the hood, darkness. And deeper in, the glint of eyes that had watched men kneel and empires rot. Not the color of any beast I knew. They seemed to catch the torchlight and fold it into themselves. No beggar's gaze could do that. No man bound to dirt and hunger carried that kind of terrible patience as anything but bitterness. This was not a man who had been broken by the world. This was a man who had chosen to stop breaking it long enough to stand very still. Kael's shadow fell over us both. The elders fanned out, forming a crescent to mirror the altar. Their faces were masks, but their hands were eager. The audience smelled of blood-warm excitement and fear. Somewhere, Salome began to cry in tiny, careful breaths. "Mara," Kael said, and my name in his mouth felt like an order. "Come back to the altar." I didn't move. "Do you know what you've done?" he asked, conversational as a blade being whetted. "Do you know what I'll do for it?" The beggar's thumb rested against my pulse as if taking my measure. He did not remove his hand. He did not step away. When he spoke, it was without looking at Kael. "She made a choice. Not one she gets to keep." Kael's tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Release her." The grip on my wrist tightened by a fraction. "Not defiance. Decision." "Tell me," the beggar murmured. low enough that the words were almost only breath. "If you walk back, do you return whole?" "No," I said, and the truth trembled out of me again, uninvited, unstoppable. "Then don't walk back," as if it could ever be that simple. The elders drew closer. The ceremonial brand steamed in the cold. I could feel its heat from where I stood, could smell the memory of 100 girls who had learned to smile through searing. "Last chance," Kael said. "Kneel," I tasted copper. I remembered the seamstress's fingers on the hem, muttering about purity while the thread burned my skin where it brushed. I remembered my mother's grave, a cairn of river stones, and how there was no room between death and obedience to store a daughter's desires. I didn't kneel. Kael took one step toward me. The world leaned with him. Torches guttered, as if oxygen remembered where it belonged. He was not a man to most of them. He was the promise of order held together with violence. He lifted his hand, and every elder bowed their heads. The beggar's free hand rose, unhurried, as though he reached into the air to take hold of its spine. A low sound shivered out of him. Not a growl, not human, and it slid along my nerves like ice water. Kael stilled. "Careful," the beggar said. And now he did turn his hood toward our alpha. "You are near a line you do not see." The clearing went so quiet I could hear the river beneath the earth. Even the elder's breath slowed, as if the night had commanded them to hush. Something ancient peered through the ragged edges of this man who called himself a beggar. It watched Kael with the calm of a predator who could take the world apart with patience alone. I had come to the darkness seeking a little sin to save me. I had tried to give a stranger the shape of my mouth without the act itself, counting on superstition to make a shield. I had thought myself clever. I was only desperate. Desperation and cleverness are not the same thing. One saves you by inches, the other by accident. Kael's eyes flicked to my wrist in the beggar's hold, then back to the hood's darkness. He smiled. It was terrible. "You presume," he said, "to stand between me and what is mine." The beggar's thumb pressed once to my pulse. A silent question. "Still with me?" "Yes," I breathed, not sure who I answered. "I presume nothing," he said. "I warn." Kael's smile sharpened. "Then I refuse your warning." The elders began to speak the claiming words, syllables older than our bones, meant to bind, meant to brand. Their voices braided into a rope. The crowd leaned forward, hungry for a punishment dressed as spectacle. The beggar released my wrist. Not surrender, an invitation. "Choose," he said to me alone. There it was, the smallest, cruelest word in any language. Freedom masquerading as a choice you can't bear. I could go back to the altar, learn to be the kind of quiet the pack loved. Wear Kael's mark and call it safety. Swallow my voice and say it tasted like devotion. Or I could step into a darkness I did not understand. Beside a man who wasn't a man at all, who had the patience of winter and the promise of a storm behind his ribcage. Above us, the moon slid fully free of cloud. I took one step back, not away from the beggar, but away from Kael. The elders choked on their own words. The brand hissed louder, as if angry it had been denied a mouth to feed on. Salome made a sound like she'd been struck. "No," Kael said gently, as if coaxing an animal not to bite. "Mara." I didn't answer. The beggar's hood tilted, and though I couldn't see his mouth, I knew he was not smiling. He didn't traffic in small mercies like that. "Very well," Kael murmured, and the forest seemed to shrink. "Remember I offered kindness. Remember you spat in it." He lifted his hand, and the brand's glow flared. The beggar moved. Not fast. Not slow. Right. He stepped in front of me, one pace that felt like a door closing. The air changed temperature, colder and sharper, as if his body taught the wind obedience. Kael paused for the first time. Not because he feared, but because something old in him recognized something older in the man at my side. "Who are you?" one elder whispered, voice cracking. The rag-wrapped figure didn't answer. The night answered for him. A sound rolled through the pines, low and resonant, a rumor of thunder with a heartbeat stitched inside it. Wolves in the back rank dropped their gazes. Even Kael's eyes narrowed, just a fraction, measuring, recalculating, choosing a cruelty big enough to fit this new shape. The beggar leaned toward me so close his words warmed the shell of my ear. "If you stay," he said, "they will break you with ceremony and call it love. And if I go with you?" My voice shook. "What will you call it?" "War." The word landed in my chest like a lit match. I should have asked 100 questions. I should have demanded a name, a price, a promise. Instead, I looked down at my wrist where his hand had been, skin tingling like it remembered the press of a mark that had not been made. I thought of the girls with their silver-burned palms and hollow smiles. I thought of the way Kael said my name and meant mine. I thought of my mother's stones and the silence between them. "Then take me," I said. And if I was ashamed of the shaking, the night didn't tell. The beggar stepped to the side, not touching me, creating a path that belonged to no one but my feet. He would not drag me. He would not make the choice for me. Of course he wouldn't. Men who are certain never need to yank. I took another step back. Kael's hand lowered, and his face transformed into something I had never seen before. A joy so bright it looked like a knife. Oh, he was pleased I'd defied him. Predators adore a chase. "Run, little Vale," he said softly. "I love the ones who make me work." The beggar's head turned a fraction, listening to something I couldn't hear. The torches guttered as if wind moved through them, though the air was still. Somewhere far beyond the trees, a deeper voice was waking. I didn't run. Not yet. I did the most dangerous thing a prey animal can do. I looked back at Kael, at the altar, at the elders and their brand, and I memorized every detail of the cage I was choosing to leave, because I knew cages had a way of finding you again. Because I knew leaving was only the first cruelty. Because something in the beggar's stillness whispered a promise I did not understand. That there are worse fates than being claimed by an alpha, and truer wars than the ones wolves fight with teeth. I stepped into the dark beside him. He did not touch me. He did not need to. Behind us, the elders began to howl the law we had broken. Ahead of us, the forest opened like a mouth that had already decided it would swallow me whole. And above us, the moon watched with the kind of attention that feels like a verdict I had not. Kissed a stranger beneath her gaze. I had done something far more unforgivable. I had tried, and men like Kael don't punish girls for what they do. They punish them for what they try to become. I kept my head high and did not make a sound. The first thing I learned about freedom was that it bleeds. Every branch that tore at my dress, every thorn that snagged my hair, every stone that split my heel, each whispered the same truth. The world beyond Duskfall had teeth too. The difference was, these teeth didn't pretend to love you. The forest swallowed the light behind us. Only the pale gleam of the moon dared follow, carving thin silver wounds across the dirt path. The beggar, no, the man moved ahead of me, his steps silent, his shape stitched to the dark like a shadow that refused to belong to anyone. I hadn't spoken since the altar. Words felt dangerous now, the kind of thing that might summon the past back too soon. The only sound was the hiss of my own breath, ragged and uneven, and the faint rustle of his cloak as he walked. After what felt like hours, I couldn't hold the silence anymore. "You knew," I said quietly. "You knew what would happen." He didn't stop walking. "You made it happen." "You could have stopped me." "I did." The simplicity of it stung. "Then why are you still here?" "Because you followed." He looked back, and even through the darkness, I felt his gaze pull me apart, layer by layer, until the girl who'd stood at the altar felt like a story I'd once told about someone else. His hood had fallen slightly, just enough for the moon to catch the line of his jaw, pale and hard as river stone. I wanted to ask his name, but something in me knew names had power, and I wasn't ready to give him mine again either. We walked deeper, until the scent of pine gave way to iron and rain. The trees grew stranger here, bark veined with faint silver lines that pulsed like veins beneath skin. I could hear faint whispers, or maybe wind, or maybe the forest itself remembering the night's defiance. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Where he won't follow," Kael? His silence answered. You don't believe that, I said softly. He'll come. He always comes, he paused. For the first time, he turned fully toward me. Then you'll learn what it means to be hunted by your own gods. The way he said it, quiet, almost tender, made the air between us colder. I wanted to laugh, but the sound caught in my throat. You talk like him. No, he said, stepping closer. He talks like me. Something shivered beneath my skin, a sense of wrong familiarity. My pulse betrayed me. He noticed. I could tell by the way his head tilted slightly, the same way a wolf studies something it wants to understand before deciding whether to kill it. You're not a beggar, I whispered. No. What are you then? He didn't answer. Instead, he began walking again, deeper into the dark, and I had no choice but to follow. The night grew stranger. The air thickened, heavy with unseen eyes. I heard the river before I saw it, a black serpent cutting through the forest floor. The current whispered against the stones, carrying flecks of moonlight like silver dust. He stopped at the edge. Wash, I blinked. What? He gestured to my wrist, where Kael's brand should have burned. There was no mark, only the faint ghost of his own grip. You stood beneath the claiming spell, he said. Even if it didn't touch your skin, it touched your scent. The river will strip it. I don't understand. You don't need to. Just do it before the wind carries your name back to him. I knelt at the edge and plunged my hands into the freezing current. The cold bit deep, but it was a clean kind of pain, one that made me aware of every bone I owned. The water glittered faintly around my fingers, threads of silver breaking and reforming like veins of living light. When I looked up, he was watching me. Not like Kael had. Kael's gaze always wanted ownership. This man's gaze wanted memory. What's your name? I asked quietly. He hesitated. The river's murmur filled the space between us. Eryndor, he said finally, like the word had weight. Once, before I stopped being a name, I frowned. That's not an answer. He turned away, cloak catching on the wind. Neither is your question. Something in his calm unnerved me. I followed again, unwilling but unable to stay behind. The forest began to change. The trees grew taller, their roots curling like sleeping beasts. Pale symbols glowed faintly across the trunks. Old runes, older than our pack, older than any prayer I'd ever heard. It felt like stepping into the ribcage of a sleeping god. Is this your home? I asked. No, he said, but it remembers me. The words stirred a memory from childhood stories. My mother used to whisper about spirits that walked in borrowed skin, about wolves born before the moon goddess herself learned to shape the bond between man and beast. She called them the silent blood, half gods, half ruin, cursed to walk unseen among mortals until the world forgot them. But that was a myth, wasn't it? We stopped near a clearing where the trees bent inward, their branches forming a black dome that almost shut out the sky. Eryndor crouched, brushing his fingers through the dirt. The ground trembled faintly under his touch. She'll find us soon, he murmured. Kael, the moon. The word hit me like a stone. The moon doesn't care about me. She does now. You defied her ritual. He rose, brushing his hand clean. The claiming isn't just for him. It's for her law, and when you broke it, you didn't just anger an alpha. You challenged the goddess herself. I stared at him. You talk like you've met her. His mouth twitched. More than once. Then what is she? Cruel, he said softly. Because she made us in her image. I wanted to ask what he meant, but his eyes had gone somewhere far away, deeper than any forest could reach. The kind of distance that belongs to old grief. A howl broke the silence, low, echoing through the trees. It wasn't Kael's, but the forest shifted with unease, like it remembered something it didn't want to. Eryndor looked up. We don't have long. He started walking again, faster now, and I struggled to keep up. My bare feet slid on moss and roots, my breath catching against the cold air. When I stumbled, he caught me before I fell. His hand against my arm was steady, grounding. Too steady. You can't go back, he said quietly. I wasn't planning to. You say that now. Wait until the forest starts whispering what you left behind. He let me go. The warmth of his touch lingered longer than it should have. We reached a ruined archway at the edge of the clearing, stone overgrown with vines, symbols half buried beneath moss. Beyond it lay a faint light, flickering like breath. "What is this place?" I whispered. "A crossing. To where? Everywhere you've been told doesn't exist." Before I could answer, he stepped through. The light rippled, swallowing him whole. I hesitated only a second before following, because the sound of howling was growing closer now. Too many, too organized. Kael's trackers. The world tilted as I crossed. The air shimmered. The forest bent into itself like paper folding. And then, silence. The cold was gone. I stood in a wide hollow filled with the faint scent of smoke and wild herbs. Above us, instead of stars, there were veins of light running through the sky like molten glass. Eryndor stood near the center, pulling down his hood. I froze. The beggar's face was not what I expected. Not human, not entirely wolf. His eyes gleamed molten gold, bright enough to burn. His skin was marked with faint lines of silver, tracing symbols that pulsed with every heartbeat. He looked nothing like a man who begged. He looked like something that had once been worshipped and had grown tired of it. "Who are you?" I whispered. He studied me for a long moment. "The mistake your alpha fears." The ground beneath us rumbled. The howls were closer now, echoing through whatever space we stood in. Eryndor's gaze sharpened. "He's coming. Kael?" "No," he said. Something worse. The air split like torn silk. From the light veins above, a shape began to descend, white, vast, and shimmering. The moon's own echo, raw and furious. I felt my knees weaken under the weight of it. Eryndor stepped in front of me, his body tense, his voice low and cold. "You wanted to escape a king," he said. "Now you've woken a god." The sky broke open, and the forest began to scream. The sky didn't open like a blessing. It opened like a mouth. Light spilled down, too white, too clean, peeling the dark from the hollow until every secret had bones. The air stung my eyes. My breath turned brittle. I had wanted escape. I had not wanted judgment, but judgment came anyway, smooth as polished stone, cold as the inside of a tomb. Eryndor stepped in front of me, shoulders squared, head lifted. Without the hood, he looked carved from the same material as the night, something honed, something withheld. The silver lines in his skin brightened until they were almost unbearable to look at. "Do not kneel," he said. "Quiet." I wasn't planning to, I whispered, but the truth was smaller. My body wanted to fold, to make itself smaller than a question. The light wanted me on the ground. It wanted me beneath it. It wanted, the shape above us unfurled, neither beast nor woman nor anything I had a word for, a ribcage of white fire, a veil of frost, eyes like empty circles cut into the world, not a goddess in the soft stories, a function in a hard one. When it spoke, it didn't use a voice. It used the ache behind my teeth. "You broke the law." I flinched. The words shivered through my bones like cold mercury. "She survived it," Eryndor said. "That makes your law small. She belongs to the altar. She belongs to her own breath." The light focused. For a terrible breath, I thought it would choose me and unmake me the way rivers unmake footprints. I tasted iron. The dress that had shimmered in duskfall felt like a dead thing now, heavy with borrowed purity. "Why me?" I managed. "There are other girls, other ruinous hearts." The light turned. I don't know how I knew I had its attention, only that my spine recognized the weight of it, the way the trees had recognized Eryndor. "Because you refused before you were asked." Somewhere far off, a howl rose and fell like a blade thrown into the sky. Kael. Of course he would find the thread we'd tried to cut. Of course the world was woven from threads he owned. Eryndor took a single step, placing himself between me and that sound. "Take your quarrel with me," he said to the light. "If you want obedience, you should have made me soft." The hollow trembled. The veins of fire overhead flared. The moon's echo, whatever this was, leaned closer. I smelled snow that never melts. I smelled the sterile ache of altars that remember too much. "Last chance, child. Kneel, and this ends in ash instead of blood. I should have been clever. I should have lied. I should have bent with the wind and called it survival. I won't," I said. and the thing in the sky smiled without a mouth. The world lunged. Light lanced down. A clean white spear. Eryndor moved like he had been waiting his entire life to be struck. He caught the stroke with his bare hand. He didn't stop it. He diverted it. The spear tore into the stone behind me, splitting the ground into a spiderweb of new truths. Heat scalded my face. Eryndor's palm smoked. Every silver line on his skin flared, then guttered. Again, he said, not to the moon and not to me, to himself. The second strike came colder. He held that too. And I heard the creak of something old bearing weight. His jaw clenched. His eyes stayed on mine as if the only way to carry the light was to anchor it to a living gaze. "What are you?" I whispered. His mouth curved, not soft. Not cruel. The part of the story that lived long enough to be inconvenient. A third brightness gathered above us. The hollow tightened. The air thinned. My knees buckled, not from fear but from pressure. I pressed my palms to the scarred ground and tasted dust and forgotten prayers. I thought of Kael, of the brand that had nearly kissed my skin, of the way his voice promised that even mercy could be a weapon if sharpened right. Eryndor swayed. "Stop," I said to the light, to the law, to the hunger wearing God's clothing. "If it's me you want..." He cut me a look that silenced the rest. "Do not offer yourself to anything that calls the sacrifice mercy." The third strike never fell. Instead, the hollow rippled. The moon's echo went very still, listening, no, hearing, the same thing I did half a heartbeat later. Boots. Many. Moving as one. Pack. Kael's wolves were through whatever door we thought we'd closed. The sound came from the archway we'd crossed, but it also came from the air itself, like the world had decided to bring the law to me wherever I ran. Eryndor's eyes changed. Not color. Depth. A cold, deliberate assessment slid into place. The light's attention shifted a fraction, calculating new satisfactions. "This is not your altar," he told it. "This is older ground. By the hollow road, I name sanctuary." The veins in the sky dimmed. The moon's echo withdrew a little, disgust coiling like smoke. "Sanctuary for those who were made for silence," it said. "Not for their strays. She is neither." His stare didn't leave the light. "She is a refusal. Old law demands you honor it." A long pause. The air tasted like the inside of a bell that had been struck and was still deciding whether to ring. The light folded. Not gone. Waiting. Watching. A single line of white traced itself across the ground between me and the archway. A warning. A border. "You will not cross this place with blood on your hands," it said. "Choose your trespasses wisely." The sky sealed itself. The hollow exhaled. Sound returned one thread at a time. The whisper of herb smoke. The soft complaint of roots. My breath mending. Then the first of Kael's hunters spilled through the arch. They wore the pack the way Kael wore power, like it was the only skin that fit. Eyes gone wolf amber, movements tight as bowstrings. Their sense, even in this not place, found me because they had been trained to find women like me, girls who tried. The hunter at the front, a woman with a scar down her lip, and the careful stillness of a weapon took me in with a glance and dismissed me with another, her attention fixed on Eryndor. "Stand aside," she said. "By Alpha's word." "Tell your Alpha," Eryndor said mildly, "that if he wants to be king of something more than afraid men, he should stop chasing girls into holy places." Her nostrils flared. "Holy? This is a ruin. It's where the gods come to remember what they regretted." Her mouth twitched. Not a smile. Something like it if the lesson had been pain. She lifted her hand. The hunters fanned, closing. Not onto the line the moon had left. None of them stepped over it. Even hunger knows when to respect older teeth. "Bring the girl," she said. The compulsion hit like a net. Not as strong as Kael's would have been, but enough to make my bones hum with obedience. I took one step because my body remembered how to be told. Eryndor's fingers brushed the air, and the compulsion fell apart like a lie said twice. "New rule," he said. "No one commands her inside this circle." The woman's gaze sharpened. "What are you?" "Impolite." "Alpha will be here soon," she said. The smallest satisfaction warmed her words. He wants to ask the girl a question. What kind of question? I said, because even terror has curiosity for a twin. Her eyes cut to me. Why she thinks she can survive what loves her. Eryndor's head tilted. You left a man alive behind the altar, he said, as if remembering a book he hadn't finished. A priest with a brand in his hand. We left him breathing, she said. Alpha doesn't like when the law dies before it speaks. Kael doesn't like when anything dies without permission, I said, surprising myself with the shape of my voice. Her smile was quick and thin. You think you're different. You're the same thing in a different dress. Trouble wants a name before it kneels. You call it kneeling, I said. I call it drowning standing up. She twitched at that, as if the word struck somewhere she'd decided didn't exist. Then something took her over. Training, vow, fear. And she raised 2 fingers. Arrows sang. They didn't fly far. The line the moon had drawn flared. Every shaft that crossed it turned to ash. The air filled with the soft sound of things ending. The hunters didn't startle. They had expected it and fired anyway, because that's what obedience is. Doing the wrong thing beautifully. You're wasting time, Eryndor told them. We're buying it, she answered. He went very still. For a heartbeat, I thought he would unleash whatever waited underneath his calm. Instead, he looked at me, and what I saw there wasn't power. It was calculation braided with care until both were the same rope. There are 3 ways out of this place, he said. 1 leads back to the altar. 1 leads into the river where names are swallowed. 1 leads to the gray sanctuary. Sanctuary, I repeated. That sounds like a lie with a softer mouth. It is, he said. But it also has doors Kael can't open without bleeding. What about the river? You'll lose more than the scent of his law. What more? The parts of you that use names like anchors? His gaze did not flinch from mine. You'll forget the girl who refused before she was asked. Something inside me pressed bruised palms to my ribs as if to hold itself together. And the altar? You know the altar, I did. I knew it in my nightmares and in the bland, careful daydreams I forced myself to have when the nightmares were too honest. What would you choose? I asked, hating the need in it. I'm not allowed to choose for you. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have that won't become a cage. Boots. More. Closer. The hunters shifted. The woman with the scar rolled her shoulders as if loosening something that had been clenched since birth. Alpha, she said, and her voice was almost reverent, almost afraid. He entered like weather. Kael did not hurry. He didn't need to. Time ran ahead of him to arrange the room. The moment he stepped through the arch, the hunter's spine straightened. The air leaned. The hollow remembered it could break. His gaze swept the circle, paused on the line of light, then found me. It was the first time I'd seen him up close without an altar between us. Beautiful, yes, but beauty is a mercy word. Kael was efficient. Everything about him made sense if you accepted inevitability as a god. Mara, he said, and my name on his tongue felt like it had been used to sharpen a blade. Alpha, Eryndor said, almost pleasantly. The world is very small when you make it from the inside out. Kael regarded him with interest, the way a man might consider the wolf that refused to leave his yard. You've trespassed in a pack's ritual, he said. You've interfered with a lawful claim. I've interrupted a sentence, Eryndor said. If a law can't survive a comma, it doesn't deserve the breath. Something like a smile touched Kael's mouth. Not warmth, anticipation. His attention returned to me. Kneel, he said softly. The word wasn't sound. It was gravity given orders. My body lurched toward the ground. Inside the circle, the line of light flared, fighting the command with its own kind of hunger. Eryndor's hand found the air beside me and closed, as if there was something there only he could see. The compulsion faltered. My knees hit the stone anyway, a bruise blooming up my bones. Kael watched with interest. I like when they try, he murmured. It's almost like honest worship. Get up, Eryndor said, and I did, because his words didn't shove. They made room. Kael's gaze flicked to the silver lines under Eryndor's skin, to the way the circle obeyed him. Old blood, he said. I wondered if you were a rumor. His eyes returned to mine. You're good at finding monsters, little Vale. Maybe monsters are good at finding me. Maybe, he said. You tried to break a thing made to hold you. I should hate you for it. I don't. I hate the men who taught you to think that trying is the sin. He stepped close enough that the line of light hummed between us like a held breath. Come out, Mara, he said. You'll walk back beside me. I'll cut every tongue that spoke your name without permission. I'll kill the seamstress who lied purity onto your skin. I'll break the elders' hands one by one so they forget how to bless. His eyes softened without warming. I will make the world gentle for you. All you have to do is give me your throat for a while. I wanted to spit. I wanted to say I wasn't a thing he could make gentle by making everything else bleed. I wanted to call him what he was, a ruin-wearing order. But the truth is uglier. Part of me wanted to step over that line. Not because I believed him, because surrender is the lullaby they teach girls in places like Duskfall. And I was very tired. Eryndor said my name. Just my name. He said it like a door not yet opened. I swallowed. No. Kael's expression didn't change. He nodded once, almost like approval. Good, he said. Make me work. He lifted his hand. The hunters readied, not moving forward, not crossing the border the moon had cut. He wasn't going to take me with force, not yet. He was going to take me with time. Choose, Eryndor murmured low. River, sanctuary, altar. Choose before he builds a house inside your doubt. My heart thudded against its cage. The river would strip me. The sanctuary would hide me. The altar would end me cleanly. Cleanly is another mercy word. I won't forget myself, I said. Then sanctuary, Eryndor said, and there was the smallest relief in his tone. So small it hurt. But hear me. Gray places keep their color by eating yours. You'll need a vow to cross. What kind of vow? 3 words and the spine to mean them. He lifted his hand. A door I couldn't see until he named it slid open in the air behind us, thin and pale, like a scar healed wrong. Kael watched, arms loose at his sides, eyes bright. Run, he said softly. I will catch up. I always do. I took a breath that tasted like iron and winter. Eryndor's gaze held mine. The glow of the lines beneath his skin had dimmed to embers. He looked tired in that way ancient things do. Not from exertion, but from history. What are the words? I asked. His answer was old and small and heavy. I choose war. The hollow listened. My body did what it had been trying to do since the altar. It decided itself. I choose war. I said. There was no magic to it. No thunder, only a click, as if the world had been a lock waiting for the right lie. The door behind us opened wider. Kael exhaled, almost amused. Good, he said again. He looked like a man who had found a worthy road. Make me earn it. Eryndor moved, not touching me, only aligning himself so his shadow covered mine. We stepped backward together, into the gray. As the border closed, Kael's voice followed, even through the rules of older gods. Don't die running, he said. I want you alive when you learn what my love does to the world. The door sealed, and the hollow went quiet. The gray sanctuary took us in one swallow. The air turned cool and tasted like metal and rain left too long on stone. The light had no source. The walls had no edges. The ground felt like memory. Eryndor finally let out the breath he'd been holding since the sky opened. He didn't look at me when he spoke. War costs, he said. I know. You don't. Teach me. He turned then, and for the first time, the ruthlessness I'd expected from Kael. Sharp, honed, purposeful, burned in Eryndor's eyes instead. Not against me, for me, with me. The kind of ruthlessness that doesn't ask what a girl is worth to a king, but what a king is worth to a girl who has already walked away. Then listen, he said. The first lesson is simple and cruel. What is it? No one who loves you in this world will ever be gentle. Choose the ones whose cruelty builds a road you can walk without breaking. He tilted his head, listening to something far beyond the gray. We have a little time before he learns how to open this door. How little? Not enough, I nodded. Then let's spend it like thieves. A shadow of a smile ghosted his mouth and was gone. Good, he said. "Make me work." Somewhere on the other side of the sanctuary, the moon turned her face, and I felt, not a blessing, but the shape of a debt. I didn't kneel. I didn't look back. I followed the man who shouldn't exist into a place that had already decided what I owed it, whispering the vow I had chosen like a talisman against the ruin I had married myself to. I choose war. The gray sanctuary was not gray at all. It was colorless, a world drained of choice, a silence so complete it pressed against my skull until I could hear my own pulse like a drum of guilt. The ground was smooth stone, cold as memory. The sky hung low and white, trembling faintly, as if unsure whether it was allowed to fall. I could not tell if the place had light or if it simply refused darkness. Eryndor walked ahead, his silhouette cutting clean against the stillness. He moved like someone walking through an old nightmare, knowing every turn, every ghost, every price. "This place," I whispered. "It feels like it remembers what we did." "It remembers everything," he said. "That's what sanctuaries are built for. Not to protect, but to witness." The word witness sank into me like a shard. I didn't want witnesses. I wanted forgetting. But forgetting was for cowards and corpses, and I was neither. "Not yet," I caught up to him. "How long before Kael finds us?" He didn't answer at first. His eyes, those impossible glowing eyes, shifted toward the horizon that had no end. "He already has. He just doesn't know what to do with the finding." I frowned. "You mean—" "He's not chasing a girl anymore," Eryndor said. "He's chasing a story. And stories don't die the way bodies do." I hated that he spoke in riddles. Hated that he always sounded like a prophet who'd buried too many truths to care if you understood. "I didn't ask for a story," I said. "I asked for my life back." He turned to me, his expression unreadable. "And what is life, Maravale? The breathing between cages? I'm tired of riddles." "Then start asking better questions." Something inside me snapped at his calm. "Fine, why me?" Eryndor didn't move, but the air did. A ripple went through the ground, like a pulse beneath the stone. "Because you were born beneath a blood eclipse," he said quietly. The night the moon looked away, children born in that silence were meant to belong to no alpha, no goddess. The law forgot you, and the law fears what it forgets. "So I'm cursed," I said. He shook his head. "You're unfinished." A long silence followed. I stared at him, at the faint silver lines tracing under his skin like lightning caught beneath flesh. "And what about you?" I asked. "What are you?" He looked at his hand for a moment, flexing the fingers like they remembered something that hurt. "Once," he said, "I was her weapon." "Whose?" "The moon's." The words crawled through the sanctuary like insects through old bone. I took a step back. "You said she's cruel. She is. But even cruelty needs something to hold the knife." His eyes flicked to me. "That's what I was." "And now?" "Now," he said, "I teach knives to refuse their masters." A low hum filled the air, a soundless vibration that made the hairs on my arms rise. The sanctuary pulsed once, then split into corridors of light. Eryndor didn't look surprised. "She's listening," he said. "She doesn't like that you're here." "The moon?" He nodded. "Sanctuaries are her old rooms. She burned most of them long ago. This one survived because I hid it inside something she hates." "What's that?" "Regret." The word hit like cold water. The walls around us rippled, showing brief flashes. Faces, wars, women in veils, men with eyes like Kael's. All of them fading before I could hold the image. "What is she going to do?" I whispered. "She'll test you." "For what?" "To see if the girl who chose war is worth the blood it will cost." Before I could speak, the ground beneath me opened. Not violently, but quietly, like a door sliding under my feet. I fell. No scream, no sound. Just a plunge into weightless dark. When I landed, I wasn't in the sanctuary anymore. I stood in duskfall again. The moon hung heavy above the altar, the air sharp with smoke and perfume. My hands were clean, my dress unburned. The crowd was silent. Kael stood before me, brand in hand, eyes like gold coins reflecting fire. "Mara," he said softly, as he had that night. "Bow." My mouth opened, but no sound came. He stepped closer. The brand hissed. The heat kissed my wrist. The pain was so real it made me tremble. "You can still stop this," Kael murmured. "Just bend." I knew it wasn't real. I knew this was the moon's test. But my body didn't. Pain makes believers of everyone. "I won't," I forced out. Kael's gaze softened. Not kind, just curious. "Then burn for it." The brand seared my skin. The scent of flesh rose, the sound of sizzling like meat on flame. I screamed this time. I couldn't help it. I fell to my knees. He crouched beside me. "Tell me," he said, "was your freedom worth this?" The world blurred. His voice faded. And another voice, hers, rose through the dark like water filling my lungs. "Would you bleed again to prove a point?" "Yes," I whispered. "Would you bleed for him?" My heart lurched. "No." "Would you bleed because of him?" Silence. The question hung there, heavy as a noose. Before I could answer, the world cracked open. The false duskfall shattered, its people turning to ash that scattered upward instead of down. The pain vanished. The air went still. Eryndor stood where Kael had been, his hand outstretched. "You didn't fail," he said. I screamed. "Good," he said. "That means you were honest." I stared at my wrist. The burn was gone, but the memory of it wasn't. Was that her? Yes. What did she want? To remind you that war isn't about choosing sides. It's about choosing what parts of yourself you're willing to lose. My throat felt raw. "And you? What did you lose?" Eryndor's eyes dimmed. "My name. My love. My God." He paused, voice low. "2 of them I buried. The last one keeps trying to dig herself out." I didn't ask which one that was. I didn't need to. The moon didn't just hate him. She mourned him. A faint tremor ran through the sanctuary. The air grew colder. Eryndor looked up sharply. "She's not done," he murmured. "She's calling him." "Kael?" He nodded. "She'll use him. It's what she does best. She turns love into leashes." My heart twisted. "Then what do we do?" Eryndor looked at me, and for the first time, there was something like fear in his eyes. Not of death, but of what came after. "We prepare," he said. "Because the next time Kael finds you, it won't be to claim you." Then why? To destroy what refused him. I wanted to speak, to ask what kind of monster the moon was turning him into. But before the words formed, the sanctuary dimmed. The veins of light flickered one by one, until only Eryndor's glow remained. He turned to me slowly, his voice low, deliberate. "She's binding our fates together now, Mara. You and I. If I fall, you die. If you break, I bleed." "Why?" "Because she's cruel," he said. "And because she can." The ground pulsed beneath us like a heartbeat. Far away, in a world that no longer felt distant, I heard Kael's howl split the night, low, trembling, and wrong. He wasn't hunting me anymore. He was becoming something that could. And as Eryndor reached out his hand, I realized something that made the blood in my veins still. The war I had chosen had already started, and I was its first wound. I woke to the sound of thunder that had learned to whisper. The air inside the sanctuary trembled, alive with something I couldn't name. The veins of light that once glowed softly across the walls were dim now, pulsing in slow, uncertain intervals, like a dying heartbeat that refused to quit. Eryndor stood at the far edge of the gray plain, back turned to me, his silhouette outlined in that faint silver glow his skin still carried. He hadn't slept. Maybe he didn't need to. "Something's coming," I said softly. He didn't look at me. "It's already here." The words crawled over my skin. I sat up slowly, wrapping my arms around myself. "Kael?" Eryndor's head tilted slightly. "Not yet. She's preparing him, breaking him open so she can wear him better." My stomach nodded. "What does that mean?" "She's binding him to the thing he hates most." "Which is?" Eryndor finally turned toward me. His eyes were pale gold now, drained of their earlier fire, filled instead with something closer to pity. "You!" The world tilted. For a moment I thought I'd misheard. "Me?" He nodded once. "The moon doesn't punish through death. She punishes through devotion. Kael's strength was never his cruelty, it was his certainty. You ruined that, and she can't forgive anyone who makes her favorite wolves doubt their own hunger." A silence settled between us, deep and cold. "So she'll make him kill me," I said quietly. "No," Eryndor said. "She'll make him love you until it kills him, and when that fails, she'll make sure you're there to watch what's left." The thought made me sick. I rose, pacing the smooth stone ground, trying to think, to breathe, to make sense of the path I'd chosen. "I should have just bowed," I muttered. "No," Eryndor said sharply. "You should have done exactly what you did. Bowing is easy. Defying is how you learn who you are." I turned on him. "And what am I exactly? A weapon? A curse? Your lesson to the gods?" He studied me, unflinching. "You are the moment before mercy becomes rebellion." "I don't want to be a moment," I said. "I want to live." "Then learn how to fight." The words landed between us like iron. Before I could answer, the air shuddered. Hard, deep, wrong. A fracture opened in the far end of the sanctuary, light pouring through it like molten silver. Through that rift, I saw him, Kael, but not as he was. The man who stepped through was stripped of all that made him human. His eyes were no longer gold, but burning white, veins of light crawling up his arms like roots of moonfire. Chains made of mist and silver coiled around his shoulders, digging into flesh that healed as it tore. His breath came in uneven bursts, each one echoing like a prayer that had forgotten its God. The moon had remade him. He looked like salvation's ghost. When his gaze fell on me, something deep in my chest forgot how to move. There was recognition, but beneath it, a new kind of hunger, colder and purer. "Run," Eryndor said. I didn't. I couldn't. Kael's voice was calm, steady. "You shouldn't have left, Mara." His tone wasn't cruel. It was broken glass made soft by time. "Kael," I whispered. "Don't say my name," he said. And for the first time, I heard pain slip through his calm. "She made me remember every time you refused me." Eryndor stepped forward between us. "You shouldn't be here." Kael's eyes flicked to him. "You shouldn't exist." Light crackled between them, the air bending around their power like metal around heat. Eryndor didn't flinch. Kael didn't breathe. The moon's will hummed in the silence like a song no one wanted to hear. "I won't fight you," Eryndor said. Kael smiled faintly. "Then you'll die faster." The first blow wasn't seen, it was felt. The ground split under Kael's step, light tearing through the sanctuary floor. Eryndor met him head-on, the clash ringing like thunder bound inside a heartbeat. Sparks of white and silver scattered across the walls, burning holes in the air. I stumbled back, the shockwave stealing my breath. My body hit the cold wall, and for a moment, the whole world became a blur of light, stone, and the sound of two gods trying to destroy what was left of themselves. Eryndor's voice cut through the chaos. "Go, Mara!" But I didn't move. Kael was no longer the man who smiled at power. His movements were desperate now, frantic, furious, almost human. Every strike he threw looked like something he wished he didn't have to. Eryndor caught his arm, his voice low. "She's watching through you," Kael's teeth bared. "Then let her watch me end this." They collided again. The sanctuary screamed. Cracks split across the stone, light bleeding through. The ceiling trembled. I could feel the moon's attention pressing down through Kael's fury, through the space between us. She was using him like a hand puppet made of grief. When the noise faded, Eryndor stood bloodied but unbowed. Kael was on one knee, breathing hard, chains sizzling against his skin. "Kael," I whispered again. "Stop, please." He lifted his head slowly. The eyes that met mine were no longer cruel. They were terrified. "Mara!" he rasped. "Run! She's inside me." Before I could answer, the chains around his shoulders tightened, forcing him upright. The moon's voice poured through him, cold and absolute. "There is no running. There is only returning." Eryndor spat blood, his laughter low and savage. "Still too afraid to speak for yourself, goddess?" The moon's presence flared through Kael's body. "You're still too proud to kneel." "Always." And then the light struck. It wasn't just light. It was judgment shaped like fire. It tore through Eryndor's chest, throwing him back against the far wall. He hit the ground, motionless, smoke curling from the wound. "Eryndor!" I screamed, running to him. His skin was cold, the glow under it dimming fast. "Mara," Kael said quietly. His voice was his again, trembling, fractured. "Don't. Come closer." I looked up at him, heart hammering. "You're fighting her. For now." He took a step back, gripping his head. "But she's inside every thought I have, every word I speak. I can't hold her much longer." "There has to be a way," I said desperately. "There is." His eyes met mine. "Kill me." The world stopped moving. What? Kill me before she turns me into what she wants. Before I become the thing that hunts you. I shook my head violently. "No, I won't. You must." His voice broke. "You chose war, remember? This is what it costs. I chose freedom," I whispered. "Not this." "Freedom is never clean," he said. He took another step toward me, his breath shuddering. The light behind his eyes flickered like a dying star. "Please," he said, voice shaking. "Before she takes me again." Eryndor stirred weakly beside me, blood streaking his lips. "Don't," he whispered. "If he dies, she wins. She'll wear his death like a crown." Kael's hand twitched, the chains around him pulling tighter. "You don't understand. She always wins through grief," Eryndor gasped. "Don't give her that." The air was thick with their breath, their pain, their defiance. My hands shook, torn between the two of them. The man who wanted to die to save me, and the one who refused to let him. And somewhere above us, the moon laughed. It wasn't sound. It was light breaking bones. The sanctuary walls cracked open, veins of silver fire crawling across the ceiling. Eryndor rose, trembling but alive. "She's binding him to me," he hissed. "If one of us dies now, the other burns with him. So what do we do?" He turned to me, eyes fierce. "We break her rule. How?" "By loving what she hates most." I froze. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said softly, "you forgive him before she does." Kael's breath hitched. The chains around him went still. For one heartbeat, the moon's control faltered. I stepped forward, my voice a whisper. "I don't forgive what you did, Kael. But I forgive the man you were before she made you this." Something inside him shattered. The chain snapped like glass. Light exploded outward. Not white, but gold, warm and terrifying in its gentleness. The moon screamed. The sanctuary trembled. When the light cleared, Kael was gone. Eryndor fell to his knees, breathing hard, the glow in his veins brighter now, steadier. "She'll come back stronger," he said. "She always does." I looked at the empty space where Kael had stood. "Then so will we," Eryndor's mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. Then war it is. The sanctuary's ceiling sealed itself, leaving only silence and the faint hum of a god's retreat. But in that silence, I heard it, the faintest echo of Kael's voice, carried on air that shouldn't have remembered him. Make me earn it. And I knew the moon hadn't lost. Not yet. She was waiting for the day I would. The world ended quietly. Not with screams, not with fire, just with the soft sound of the moon turning her face away. When I opened my eyes, the gray sanctuary was gone. The sky above me was black glass, fractured by veins of white light that bled like slow lightning. The ground was neither stone nor earth, but something in between. An endless field of pale dust that shifted beneath my feet like memory. Eryndor stood beside me, his silver veins burning brighter than ever, his breath shallow. She's remade the veil, he said. A world between worlds, her hunting ground. So this is where she'll come, I said. He nodded. And where we'll end it. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. The fear had burned itself out somewhere between defiance and exhaustion. What replaced it was quieter. A terrible calm that only comes when you've already lost everything that made you flinch. She'll come wearing a face you trust, Eryndor said. Then she'll come wearing his, I whispered. A wind moved through the field, carrying whispers like broken hymns. The light above us rippled, and then, from the center of the emptiness, he appeared. Kael. But this wasn't the Kael I'd seen bound in chains. His body was whole again, unscarred, his movements too fluid, too perfect. His eyes glowed silver now, not the warm gold that once belonged to him, but the color of borrowed divinity. Mara, he said, smiling softly. I wanted to believe it was him. I wanted to believe he'd somehow broken her hold, but the voice behind the smile belonged to someone older. The moon spoke through him, her words dripping like honey into poison. You broke my ritual. You turned my chosen beast against his own blood. You defied the order that keeps this world from devouring itself. Eryndor stepped forward, his own voice low, sharp. Your order devours more than chaos ever could. The goddess tilted Kael's head. You should have stayed forgotten, weapon. Eryndor's glow brightened, his tone flat. You should have stayed merciful. The moon's laughter filled the sky. The glass above us cracked, raining shards of pale light. Mercy is what ruins gods. Kael, no, the thing wearing him, moved closer. Every step he took left a trail of silver fire in the dust. Mara, he said, come home. I didn't move. You're not him, he smiled. No? Then why does his heart still beat for you? I could feel it. The pulse beneath my ribs wasn't mine anymore. It echoed his. The goddess had tied us together like two halves of a noose. Stop it, I whispered. Let him go. He begged for this. Her voice turned almost tender. He asked for one last moment with you before I burned him clean. He said, if I must die, let me die looking at her. And I granted him that mercy. You're welcome, the words ripped through me. You're lying. Eryndor's hand brushed my shoulder. She's not, he said softly. That's how she works. She gives you truth like a knife and waits to see who bleeds first. Kael reached out his hand. Come with me, Mara. We can still make it right. She'll forgive you if you bow. It would have been easier to believe him if the air around his hand hadn't shimmered like a trap. I've bowed enough, I said. His smile faltered. The goddess inside him exhaled, and the air grew sharp as winter. Then burn. She moved through him like lightning. The ground erupted beneath my feet. I was thrown back, the shock slamming the breath from my lungs. Eryndor caught me before I hit the dust, but the force of it knocked him to one knee. His veins flared, bleeding silver light. Stay behind me, he said. No, I said. Not anymore. I stepped forward, the wind tearing at my hair, the light searing my skin. The moon's power was everywhere, cold, blinding, endless. I couldn't fight that, but maybe I didn't need to. Maybe I only needed to make her remember what it felt like to bleed. I called her by her oldest name, the one Eryndor had whispered in his sleep when the sanctuary still had walls. Selunaris, the light flickered. The goddess hesitated. You remember that name? I said. The one they stopped speaking when you crowned yourself purity. Her voice hissed through Kael's lips. You dare, yes, I said. Because you made me in your image. And maybe you forgot what that means. I lifted my burned wrist, the one she'd tried to mark, the one Kael had almost claimed, and for the first time I didn't hide the scar. The faint trace of the altar's heat glimmered against my skin. You think the bond makes me weak, I said, but it makes me yours. That means if you destroy me, you destroy what's left of you too. The moon screamed through Kael's body. The field shook. The light fractured into storms. Eryndor grabbed my arm. Mara, stop. No, I said. She needs to feel it. I stepped closer until I could see Kael's face beneath her control, the faint glint of pain behind his silver eyes. You hear me, don't you? I whispered. Fight her. His body trembled. The chains of light reappeared, digging into his flesh as the goddess tried to tighten her hold. His mouth twisted in agony. Mara. The sound of my name was barely human. Don't let her use you, I said. Not again. He fell to his knees, the light flickering violently. The goddess's voice roared through him. You think love can break me? No, I said. But it can starve you. I reached out, pressing my palm against his chest. Beneath my hand, his heartbeat stuttered, wild and erratic. You loved me once, Kael, not as a king, not as a god, just as a man. Remember that. The light beneath his skin pulsed once, twice, then flared. For a moment, his eyes cleared. Mara, he breathed. Run. I'm done running. Eryndor's voice rose behind me, ancient and terrible. He began to chant in a language I didn't know, the symbols along his skin igniting like stars being born. The air bent. The ground split. Eryndor, don't stop, he said. Finish it. I pressed harder against Kael's chest, ignoring the burning pain that crawled up my arm. If you remember me, I whispered, then remember yourself. The goddess screamed, and the world went white. When the light faded, Kael's body was still. The chains were gone. The glow had vanished. The goddess's voice was silent, and Eryndor was dying. He lay on the ground, the light inside him leaking out in slow, beautiful threads. I crawled to him, choking on tears I didn't realize I still had. You broke her, I said. He smiled faintly. No, you did. I only held the door. Don't leave me. I can't stay. His eyes dimmed. This place was built from my defiance. Now it needs to end. I shook my head, gripping his hand. You can't die. He looked past me, toward the sky where the cracks were closing, sealing the wound we'd made in the heavens. Then make sure I don't. I didn't understand what he meant until his hand went still, and the silver lines that once burned beneath his skin began to crawl into mine. The glow spread up my arm, threading through my veins, burning cold and hot all at once. Eryndor, I screamed, but his body was already turning to dust, dissolving into the light he'd carried for so long. The last of him entered me like a whisper, a promise, a curse. When I stood, I wasn't just Mara Vale anymore. The field was silent. Kael's body lay motionless, the faintest trace of breath still trembling in his chest. I knelt beside him, brushing the hair from his face. His eyes flickered open, gold once more. You won, he rasped. No, I said quietly. We survived, he smiled weakly. Same thing, and then he was gone too. The cracks in the sky sealed completely. The light dimmed to twilight, and I was alone. For a long time I didn't move. The dust settled around me, burying the last remnants of two men who'd tried to save me in their own ways. One with mercy, one with ruin. Then, somewhere deep within me, the goddess stirred, not as a voice, but as a shadow, silent, patient. She hadn't died. She had changed, and now I carried her, her cruelty, her grief, her power. I looked up at the broken sky and whispered, You wanted obedience. You got a mirror instead. The world shuddered once, then went still. In the distance, the moon rose, red this time, not white, and I understood. War was never about victory. It was about inheritance. Eryndor's voice echoed faintly inside me, soft as the wind over old graves. No one who loves you will ever be gentle. But some cruelties build kingdoms. I smiled through the tears. I'll build mine from ashes. And under the blood-colored moon, the girl who wouldn't bow became the goddess who never would.